On this episode of A Soul's Quest podcast, Omar and I are reviewing the movie The Legend of Bagger Vance and the lessons for our quest. Stay tuned. We are talking about The Legend of Bagger Vance today, which is an amazing, amazing movie. Like every time I watch the movie, I get emotional, and I know that at some point I'm going to get choked up here. So forgive me for being emotional. But
now we're talking about this movie, so and I just want to make this point. Like, so whenever we do a movie review, it pertains to what we do in a soul's quest, right? Which is that idea of life transitioning. You know, from one point in life to another. So the hero's journey and the transitions, you know, of the life cycles of life, and those transitions in between those cycles. And that's always going to be our focus. And I'm going to be saying that a lot too, because that's going to be one of our, as we progress in our quest, we're going to be do more specific things in terms of individual and in terms of how individuals work in a group, like in leadership and organizations. So when we set the foundations on these movies reviews, it's for those two things, you know, so I want to set that, kind of like say that.
The foundation. So I was going to say, that's good that you're going to be the one, because usually I'm the one that's like, wrap it up, keeping us on check. But I get excited about the movies. So
yeah, you do get
you'll
excited
have to keep me, you have to keep me focused. So what is The Legend of Bagger Vance about?
Okay, so The Legend of Bagger Vance is, we could both say, what do you?
No, I know. Okay, so it's basically set during the Great Depression.
Yeah. And
Adele,
Amber Gordon
is Charlize Theron. She plays her. She plays Adele. And her and Rannulph Junuh. Rannulph? Is that how, they're kind of weird names, right?
Rannulph Junuh.
Rannulph Junuh is the main character.
The main character, played by Matt Damon,
Played by Matt, yes. And he is, and so they're in a relationship, and they ultimately, they're doing great. They're doing whatever, and he ultimately decides that he's going to sign up for.
He's now, in context, he is one of the top golfers in the South during that era of the Roaring 20s.
And I should rewind, actually, because Adele is basically, it's hard to say because I wanted to kind of showcase that they're in this really great relationship, and then he ends up going off to the war, World War I. And during that time, the Depression starts to hit, and Adele's family fortune, basically her life's legacy, was the golfing resort that they have, their family resort.
That they just built, yes.
And
Crew Island.
And so the Great Depression comes in, they start to lose substantially, whatever. So she comes up with this, the father ends up kills himself. And
then consequently, right, on Junuh's part, he goes out into World War II, right? So, you know, Adele has that the catastrophe in the family, about to lose the legacy that the father left behind. And then he comes back from war, a complete disaster. He lost
his entire company.
His entire company. And then, so here he left as a hero.
Yes,
and
as a golfing hero.
As a golfing hero, and as a hero to go out there and represent the American principles in Savannah. And he comes back as complete and utter, not so much failure, but if you look at the context of it with PTSD as well, you know, so he comes back, and he begins to
he basically like avoids Adele, because they were in a relationship when he left, and of course he lost everything, and so he ended up walking away from that relationship as a result.
Yeah, and he became an alcoholic, you know, self-medicating. So I mean, he displays the symptoms of PTSD and that idea of shame.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
Idea of,
I think there was a lot of that.
There's a lot of that guilt and you know,
why wasn't it me that died as opposed to these people? I think there was a lot of that, a lot of those nuances going on for him. And so he comes back, and during that whole time, Adele comes up with the great idea of having this big golfing tournament to revive and to bring back, or to save her family's legacy.
Correct.
So she ends up getting
Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen.
And these are huge, golfing stars. and they end up in this. I'm trying to fast forward through all these things, and then they go into
no, but
this.
you could go into take your time, like explaining it.
Well, so basically, she's going back and forth with these people. She refuses to lose her family legacy. She comes up with this great idea to have this golfing tournament, and she gets these really renowned golfing stars to participate in it. And it's really cute how she actually gets them to do it, because she goes and she meets with Hagen. She meets
so she has to lie. She has to be, she has to be creative into the ways that she goes
and
around.
It's really cool how she does that.
So it's pretty interesting. But this is billed as like the match of the century, right? Which is like Walter Hagen, Bobby Jones, like the top golfers of that area. And some of the heroes. I'm not a real big golfing a fan, and it's interesting because I really like the movie because we'll talk about metaphors and storytelling in a few minutes, but they build it up as this big thing. So consequently,
so then what happens is they end up having this town hall meeting, and the local community
in Savannah,
Georgia, they are like, well, what about who's representing us? Like who gonna get to represent us? And so I forgot his name again. The kid.
You don't forget.
Why do I started this whole thing with the names.
Hardy Greaves.
Hardy Greaves. He is in the audience, and he basically yells out, "Rannulph Junuh. What about Rannulph Junuh?"
Yeah,
because he was like the best golfer before he went away to the war.
Correct.
And so everybody's kind of like astonished, because they're like, "What? Like how?" This guy,
this drunk.
Yeah, he's a drunk.
He's a drunk.
They talked about him, saying that he was like a recluse and all these.
I remember there was a line that it says like he wouldn't know an iron from a pussy willow.
Yes,
or something like that, because he's so drunk now.
So drunk. Yeah.
And then, but Hardy takes it upon himself to say, "Well, I heard my dad say that he was the best golfer, that he could hit a drive further than anybody." And what that represents right there, right? It's like in the monomyth. It's like that call to the adventure, right? So that call to the adventure of think about the courage and that he spoke to a young boy to speak up in front of all these men, and let them know, hey, there's this guy, and then for him to go out there, right, and try to convince a broken man to take part of this.
Yeah, which was very interesting, because he actually went in the middle of the night, looked for Junuh,
found
him. He was in the little
speakeasy.
Yeah, getting drunk, playing cards.
It's like, and I remember there's a line, there's a sequence between Hardy and Junuh in which they go into how drunk is drunk enough, right? Because he says, well, first go the sad cells, right, when you drink, because those are easier to kill. So you laugh, you laugh for everything, right?
You laugh at everything.
Then goes the another set of cells, but then the hard ones, and you have to drink more.
Now those are the ones that are hard to kill.
The memory cells, and those are the tough son of bitches to kill. Yeah. Because those memory cells are the ones that are hard to let go. And that right there, it's really the shackles that are holding Junuh back from being himself,
right? And
from living back to the potential that he was, because he's so caught up in that idea of the failure, the tragedy, losing, everybody in war, and him surviving. So all that is in there. And that's why he says, he drinks to kill those memories.
Right.
But they're really, really hard to kill. Yeah. And consequently, what you see too in a lot of drug addicts and a lot of people that, from what I've heard and from what I've seen, is try to self-medicate to kill that pain and numb that pain.
It's coping with loss. It's coping with fear. It's coping with all kinds of like emotional, lots of variables involved there. I can imagine, when you think about it, just because I don't know anything about that either, but when I look at it, a lot of times when I have talked to people who have recovered, that's what they will say. I was dealing with a lot of hurt, anger, frustration, fear, anxiety, you know what I mean? And that's how they medicated. So, so then Junuh does accept to participate in the tournament, even though he was just
well,
kinda
at
like,
first he doesn't.
no, not at
And-
first he doesn't.
And then, but this is kind of like what happens, and this is kind of like the introduction again, part of that monument.
The resistance.
The introduction of a mentor, of a guide, right?
Okay.
So after his interaction with Hardy Greaves and he's he's like, you could sleep there, and then Adele comes in and tries to seduce him as a coercion to get him to involve, but there's a friction between the two of them there because he just left her and she's over here waiting for him, and she's like, oh, that's all it took, a little preliminary romancing, and then but they never go through it. So he goes out and he starts hitting golf clubs in the dead of night, just hitting golf clubs, and they're just going everywhere, and out of nowhere comes this character.
Right. The mysterious
Bagger Vance, right? So you have the mystical introduction of a guide, right? That's which, and I think it was beautifully done, because typically is out of nowhere that the introduction of this person comes into.
It's actually amusing because he comes in out of the darkness, out of the woods and whatnot, and all there is black, and he walks in and Junuh's like, "Are you crazy? I could have hit you with one of these balls."
And he said, "No. By the way you're seeing this, and nothing was going to happen because you're sucking at this right now.
You're terrible." Right? Yes. So that's when Junuh basically Bagger actually offers to be his caddy, doesn't he?
Yeah, but the way
to coach him.
Yeah, to be his caddy. All right, but he was like the way that he goes about it is very he goes and says this, right? He goes and says he sees him swing a couple of balls, right? And he says something to the extent, the problem is you've lost your swing, right? And he's like, I lost my swing. What do you mean?
Junuh's a little taken
aback by that because it's like, he pulls the balls in. So you gotta, somehow in the middle of all there is, past, present, all that stuff, you lost your connection. You lost that swing, and you have to go and find it. You got to go and find that.
Right.
And you got to find it, but you can't find it in what you're doing right now, in essence, in isolation.
So this is the mythological quest.
This is the mythological call to the adventure
that Junuh is faced with.
Exactly, they're called to the adventure. So you have two calls of adventures. You have this young person standing up and going out there to start really his adventure, right? But then now you have a guide coming in and breaking out this broken hero to actually go and refine his swing. So you have that theme already in there, right? To find, and the idea is that you there's a purpose, there's a thing, and the metaphorical representation of a golf swing is that.
Right.
That inside each and every single one of us, there's one true authentic swing. Right. And I think that you have a quote that
I do.
Goes
actually,
into that, so go ahead.
Yeah, let me read it because so this is what we're talking about when he was hitting the balls.
Sure,
and he basically says to him, inside each and every one of us is one true authentic swing. Something we was born with, something that's ours and ours alone, something that can't be taught to you or learned, something that got to be remembered. Over time, the world can rob us of that swing. I get emotional.
I understand.
It gets buried inside us under all our wouldas and couldas and shouldas. Some folk even forget what that swing was like.
Yes.
It makes me emotional.
No, it is. But and that is the thing. That is the problem that we all face. At one time, not all of us, but this is the problem that we all face at one point or another in our lives. Right, in which the world robs us of our things. It robs us. We hide behind. Sometimes some of us hide behind the facade of successes. Some of us look at a particular event and time in our life, which as it is represented here in this particular movie, and define the rest of our lives until we are presented with an opportunity to overcome those type of things, you know. And in this case, Junuh's life is being impulsed by a young boy, you know, and he's given that supernatural aid that comes from somewhere, comes from a mentor, in the form of a guide, more of a spiritual guide, a coach, right? In the form of Bagger, you know, and so that part is the part that is very kind of like interesting to it, you know.
It's really interesting too, though, because as you watch the movie and you watch the interaction between Bagger and Junuh, it's very there's humor and levity in it, but there's also that the driving message of what we were doing an episode on mentors, guides, and teachers, and the aspect of that you talked about with a guide is somebody who, or a mentor is somebody who puts this in front of you and then guides you as to which way you should go, and to think about and put things out there to make you think about what it is that you're doing and what your next steps or what your next actions will be.
You know, and here's the interesting thing, right? So, by the way, so something that we didn't mention, because we mentioned Bagger is played by Will Smith, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I know, you know, it's controversial to kind of like say his name, but
that's not why we didn't say his name.
No, and that's not, I mean, I think we just forgot about it, but I feel that this is one of the best roles that Will Smith has ever played.
It's
like,
amazing.
ever. Like, out of the movies that I've seen, it's like, it's perhaps, to me, probably the best.
Yeah.
You know, but there's an interesting...
There's some other movies he's done that have been pretty good.
No,
but this one is the best, I would say. But there's some other movies he's done that have been pretty good. Go ahead.
But like you mentioned, the dynamic between the two of them, right? And the funny thing is that Bagger, it's not a teacher. He's not teaching him the skills.
No. Oh, no.
He's coaching him and guiding him
so that he can rediscover
what he already knew.
Right.
There's this person, Nika Costa, who's one of our favorite artists, right? She has this line in one of the songs. There's nothing I don't know, just hasn't come to me. Just hasn't come to me yet. I'm only trying to remember what we chose to forget. Right? So this is kind of like the same thing. It's a reminder of something that is truly innate. And this is, I think, the core lesson of the movie, right? The movie talks about an authentic swing, right? And that authentic swing is the core of who we are as a person, our core values, right? Our core innate skills, because we all have those things individually. Yes, we are socially conditioned to play a certain role in society. But what happens is that sometimes that conditioning takes away from that part that is within us in expectations. You know, it expects certain things. It's supposed to be this way. It's supposed to be that way. Junuh was supposed to come back a hero, and he didn't. So him questioning his life is like it's that noise back there. It's a constant thing, you know. And again, it's like you have to kind of like look at life at its peaks and its troughs and its valleys, you know. And you kind of like read that as not as something that you have to conquer, you know, and possess like that, but it's to be able to find through our adversity those innate things that we are given by our Creator, you know, and whatever you want to put on that Creator line, underneath that line, or whatever it is, or whatever it is, we all have those things, you know.
And I think what happens when we're called to that place where we have to find our authentic swing or rediscover that authentic swing is to you have to purposefully minimize the noise, minimize the talk.
Yes.
The even the inner voices that we have in our the chatter that's going on in our heads, you know.
We're gonna do a book review on chatter.
Yeah, exactly.
On that soon.
And and ultimately, like, you know, Bagger was saying, get out of our own way.
Exactly. You know, and this is the interesting thing part, right? Because part of what we do is that life reveals itself to us the more that we live and the more that we are aware of things, the more we begin to actually unfold the beauty of our lives. And this goes beyond age. It goes beyond those particular methods that we set in society. You know, how much I should be making this much money by this much time. I should be this successful. I should be that successful. Blah 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 blah. Right? It goes kind of like goes beyond that. And it goes beyond the accomplishments that we think that we have, right? There is an innate aspect of us. You know, some people might call it spiritual. Some people might call it some intuitive. Some people might call it whatever it is. There is that thing, right, that propels us to wanting to live from a certain essence, you know? Mm-hmm. And you have to go out there and look for that, you know. And that was there's a beautiful sign in which you got to look for, like in that movie, in which he's actually showing Hardy Greaves how to, you know, Hardy asks him, "Do you think Junuh has a chance to win?" And he says, "Sure, if we could find his authentic swing." And like, authentic swing, and he's like, "Yes." It's like it's a moment in which, you know, the tides and the breeze and everything just kind of like flows, and you just go there and you feel yourself. It's like, and he says, "Nah, that's a beautiful thing, isn't it?" You know, the easiest way to kind of like, to me, to articulate it is the whole idea of flow, right?
I was just gonna say that.
Right, when you are in flow and life is flowing and things are coming to you, it's like, you know, we seldom experience that, you know, because in our haste for life, we don't know exactly what that feeling is like, you know. But here, into this story, we're able to strategically see it play out in about an hour and a half, 2 hours max. And the question is, how do we apply it into our lives?
Yeah, it's a very thought-provoking movie. It's definitely brings you to a place where you start to question, you know, what is my authentic swing, and what is that what are my blockages that aren't allowing me to see my capacities and my abilities to do the things that I want to do or live from that essence that you're talking about. You know what I mean?
It's interesting because I like watching, like, you know, the after credits and all that stuff, and the conversations with the author and the actors and the creator, director, right? And one of the things that's interesting is the fact of why Robert Redford used the analogy of golf, right? And the field, right? Look at the field. Because it is, you know, what they were talking about wasn't a game. And Bagger says this line, right? What I'm talking about is a game. It's a game that cannot be won, only played. Yep. Right? And that's the game of life. Yeah. Right? So allegorically speaking, you know, they're comparing life to the game of golf. And a lot of people that play golf is like, yeah, this is the closest thing. Because number one, in golf, you could be honest, and most people are, right? But you could also be dishonest. And it's the only sport in which you could actually call a penalty on yourself, right? Which Junuh did eventually in the movie, right? It's like it's a game in which allows you to be honest, to live from a certain moral code or not, you know, because you're somewhat the officiator as well.
You're the compass. You're your own barometer.
Exactly. So this is when he says, like, this is a game that could only be played, it can't be won. You know, that kind of like goes into a deeper meaning for stuff, right? So the question will be, you know, how do you find that within yourself?
So there are 3 lessons that came from the movie that we have come up with. And basically the first thing is that the importance that roles and mentors play and guides in our lives and how important that is. And to be able to be open and be aware of what those teachings are. Yeah. Right.
And the interesting thing about, again, this particular movie is that this figure, right? Bagger. The one that plays the mentor role guide. It's like this spiritual figure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? It's, you know, he's talking from a standpoint of life more than anything else, right? And there's a person that kind of like he says he has this one conversation with Testalusa, who's like the mayor of the town, and he says, "What are you doing with this guy?" And he said, "Oh, he's still confused. He still thinks he's Rannulph Junuh." He said, "Boy, you damn twit. He is Rannulph Junuh." He's like, "He is and he ain't." Right? Because again, that is the life cycle, breaking from one stage of life and going into other. A teacher, a guide, it's able to do that. You know, it's able to explain to you and help you find those answers within yourselves. You know, that is the beautiful thing about individuals, like in this particular case, in a work of art, the beauty of someone like Bagger, someone like Yoda, someone like Obi-Wan, someone like Merlin. You know, Merlin is a mystical figure, but yet it's a person that is able to evoke the higher qualities of Arthur, in the quest for the Grail. You know, so you start seeing those things, and those people are the very special people that come into your life, or you know, you seek them out, and then they're able to guide you through those things.
I think we often do seek them out, and we just don't even know that we're seeking them out, and they just appear, which is going back to being open and acknowledging that, okay, this person's here for a reason. There's something, you know, here. So
and again, this is the beauty. I mean, to me, just looking even a little deeper, he showed up, right, out of the desire and the passion of a young boy to wanting to see Junuh again play, right? So it's like it came from this place of, and again, not to get crazy over mystical, but he came out of his desire to help this man, that this guy came about. Right, and that's what happens to us when we desire something, and we strive for that part. Then things are attracted to us to help us achieve that. And whether and then the question is whether or not we choose to answer it.
Yeah,
you know. Yeah, and that's one of the things that was the difference between Junuh and you know, and this particular movie, that he did answer that call.
Yeah. So the second lesson that we got from this movie is that the concept of finding one's true self, authentic self, and letting go of ego and the need to win is essential for personal renewal and growth.
Yeah. So
letting go of ego, letting go of that idea of what we think we're supposed to be. Right.
So our ego is an interesting thing, right? And we're going to do an episode because I'm trying to finish this, getting it scripted about the idea of ego, right? Because the ego is the things that have become conscious to us, right? And that we have allowed. But the ego represents only, you know, whenever you looked at our Jung's, how Jung kind of like creates a totality of the self. The ego is like a small part on top, but the subconscious and then our feelings and emotions and all that stuff that is deep down inside, right? And the rewiring of our brains. So all that stuff in there is it's important. Now, the best line in this movie to kind of like describe the ego or the negative aspects of our ego is that part of the could have, should-haves, or would-haves that we get stuck with, right? That you should live this particular way, that you should have done this, you should have been perfect, which is what he's struggling with. He failed miserably and people died. How do you move on from that? Yep. You know? But in our circumstances, it's as catastrophic too, because it feels that catastrophic when we failed. You know, I know that from my personal experience of having to struggle to find a place that was uniquely mine, you know, and not being accepted in different places, being ridiculed and all that stuff, you know, and so I understand that it resonates with me, correct? But then you have to get past that. And to get past that, you got to struggle just like Junuh struggled, you know, and you got to have help just like he had help, you know? So letting go of that ego. And there's a specific part in the movie in which he gets cocky because he thinks he's got it all figured out. and then boom, the world smacks him right down, and he goes back to that place in which he almost has to cheat in order to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But
he chooses not to.
But Bagger is there, you know, and then he helps him through it.
Yeah.
So that is the kind of like the idea about the ego, you know. It's like you can't really. And the reason why he struggled with that is because he started focusing on what the people were saying and all this stuff. And you can't be doing things because what other people want you to do, and want you to be.
It's a societal thing that we're talking about
it's
earlier.
That conditioning and all that stuff, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Societal expectations.
And the expectations, and you live up to that, so you're willing to do certain things that you otherwise wouldn't really do.
Exactly, yeah. And the third and final lesson that we got from this movie, although there's more than this, is that despite our best efforts to control our lives in the universe, things don't always work out the way that we want them to. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we need to stop trying so hard and just let go of the need to be in control. And we have to accept things the way that they are.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and you know what? Other people say, well, that's kind of like having a defeatist attitude and all that stuff. But there are certain things in which we cannot control.
Right.
There's a lot of things actually we cannot control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't control truly 100% how our bodies are responding on a regular basis to certain situations, right? I mean, you were struggling last night with some stuff. You know,
my body's betraying
your
me.
Your body's betraying you. You know, so there's like things like that, and then you have also the aspect of, you know, we're going on a sphere that as much as we try to predict it, we don't know exactly what will take place and what would happen.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to be cognizant of that reality as well.
Yeah.
You know, plus more than anything, it's like we can't predict how people are going to take who we are.
Right.
And you could, you know, so you could stop trying. You should try your very best to stop trying to live up to what other people might perceive about you, because you can't control that either.
And live your own life.
Exactly. You can't control that either.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say that, you know, now that I have chosen, and it sounds whatever, because I feel like I've always chosen this path, but now that I really accepted the fact that now I'm living my life for me and the way that I want to live my life, it does seem more lonely, but it's more peaceful.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so you have to be able to, and some people are afraid of that.
Yes.
Because there's a loneliness that comes with it, although I love it sometimes. There's sometimes a loneliness that can be overwhelming and make me question, what am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? Am I, you know, eliminating people from my life by being this way? Mm-hmm. But I'm not, because I'm living from my authentic self, or trying. I work on that every day to live from my authentic and that's the my quest in finding my authentic swing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that you're gonna find it, like you're gonna find it and that's it. It's something that you're reintroduced to, right? And you make amends with it, and then how are we gonna proceed together? Mm-hmm. Me and that authentic swing, you know what I mean? That's how I look at it.
But again, if you look at anybody in history, right, that it's done kind of like live from the whole authentic self, there is a certain aspect of a loneliness that's associated with it, right? Yeah. Because it's only in that loneliness that you could really nurture and grow that individuality, that essence of your own spirit. You know, it is only within that.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this
do that
since day one of A Soul's Quest. We've always talked about you got to take time, separate yourself. 40 days, 40 nights.
Exactly. And it's in those 40 days and 40 nights in which you really find those deep core, that swing that is uniquely yours. You know, now once you feel confident with it, you know, you go out in the world and you put it out there, but it is so necessary to cater that aspect of yourself constantly and massage it and celebrate it, which is something that I'm working on celebrating and more.
And I think a lot of people probably fall short on that, celebrating the small things. You know what I mean? Like I had a situation happen today to me, and I was just like, this is humbling. Like, really? Like, that can't be all this hard work and effort. But it's one of those moments where you have to step back and do the whole massaging.
Yep.
Where am I going? Okay, no worries, you know, and move forward.
Exactly.
So,
yep.
Yeah, so those are the 3 lessons that we got from the movie.
Awesome. And there's it's such a great movie to watch, because it does the hero's journey so well, so eloquently, so beautifully depicted. Everything is really beautiful about that movie. I mean, it is definitely one of my favorite movies of all times.
Yeah, if you haven't watched it, you need to
absolutely
you need to watch it. It's a great movie, definitely. So I wanted to end this episode because this is different than our normal episodes because it's the first time we're doing a movie review.
No, it's not.
So I thought
we did silence.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be doing more.
So that's what it is. I'm not used to doing them. So I just wanted to end or close with this quote by Bagger Vance. Okay, so there's a perfect swing out there trying to find each and every one of us. All we've got to do is get ourselves out of the way and let it choose us. You can't see the flag, which is the flag is in golf is actually life.
The hole. Yep.
So you can't see that life as some dragon you got to slay. You got to look with soft eyes, see the place where the tides and the seasons and the turning of the earth all come together and everything that is becomes one. You got to seek that place with your soul. Seek it with your hands. Don't think about it. Feel it. Your hands is wiser than your head ever going to be. Now I can't take you there. Just hopes I can help you find a way. Just you, that ball, that flag, and all that you are. So
beautiful.
I think that's amazing.
Beautiful.